Hello everyone, I am Prasanna Kumar, Senior Research and Program Associate at Asian Conference. In our 8th episode of Ground Speak series, we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Kevisato Sanyu, founder of NagaED, a digital education firm. Mr. Sanyu has spent most of his life in Australia. Nevertheless, his roots are from Nagaland. As an entrepreneur, he creates such enterprises which generates wealth, stimulates employment, and introduces technology to the local communities. I welcome you to the show, Mr. Sanyu.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Prasanna. Such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Let us start our discussion. My first question to you is this: what inspired you to start your company, a digital education firm in Nagaland? You know, can you please help us understand?
So, so as you mentioned, I had been living in Australia. I had done my schooling there. I had done my studies there, and I was working there as well. So I was there for about 27 years, a significant portion of my life. But in about 2016, I went to a poetry
Mhm.
recital actually by this fellow called David White. And he had a very great career and then became quite a renowned poet as well. And in one of his poems, he posed the question, what is your beautiful question? And he explained it as such as we all have these questions that are lingering in our mind. These questions we quite often push away due to circumstances, due to work, due to other priorities, but they keep reoccurring. And these questions have no right to be pushed away and have every right to be answered. So he stared into the crowd and he said, what is your beautiful question? And immediately to my mind, a question came up, which is, what is your contribution to your community? And it's something that I'd been thinking about since I was a child. And it's something that I constantly pushed away. But sitting there and there, I knew that I had to answer this question. So since then, I've been working towards for the past 5, 6 years towards how do I answer that question? Or what is the answer to that question? What is my contribution to my community?
Interesting. Good to hear this. And second question is, could you please explain us about some of the basic products or services that your company offers to schools, students, and the community in that area? Yeah.
So after deciding that that was a question that I wanted to answer, I made my way back to Nagaland after 27 years being abroad in Australia. And during that time, I was actually working in education. I was working in RMIT. And what I found is that I was working there in various areas, academic quality, innovation, and other areas. And what I found was that we had the ability to really improve the quality of the education because of digital tools and digital interventions. And so that's when I partnered with Troy and we decided to open a digital education company focusing on the Northeast. So here, of course, the platform comes with a range of tools. It's a learning management system. So it manages all the academic content, the grading, the assessments at an institutional level. It also comes with a range of content that was aligned to the state's board syllabus or any syllabus for that matter. We created the content here. But the main thing that we realized in our region is that digital education is very nascent, it's very new.
Mm.
And the thing that required most was the upliftment of the teachers and administrators and the school institution as a whole. So what we really concentrate on in terms of our products and services is really building up the capability and the capacity of those teachers. And quite often, some of it is to do with the technical tools. Some of it is to do with the technical navigation of the tools and the utilization of the tools. But a lot of it is to do with the way that we teach. A lot of it is to do with shifting the teacher's mindset from being somebody who lectures to somebody who facilitates education and creates a space that is optimal for learners to learn. Some of it is also what we found is that uh, uh, in our regions, sometimes people have an aversion to technology because they've had negative experiences in the past, because it has not always been as smooth as they'd like. Um, and one of the major reasons is that a lot of us here in the Northeast are actually touching technology, digital technology, for the first time as a first generation. So I imagine how my father lived. He lived in Konama village, which is a village here in Nagaland. And during the time that he was growing up, his family, well, our family was enemies, meaning that we believed in the old gods and spirits. We would sacrifice chickens to hail the spirit god of the forest. And these are the types of practices. Never did we imagine electricity. Never did we imagine motorable roads. And yet, in one generation, the whole landscape of our region has been transformed. Um, so this transformation is about 230 years worth of industrial revolutions happening in just one generation, and for our family in the past 30, 40 years or so. So the main thing is, how do we bring our communities, who are largely also tribal and indigenous, into the fourth industrial revolution, when just a generation ago they weren't even at the first industrial revolution. So that's where a lot of our products and services concentrate on, which is on the teacher, which is on the what we consider the delivery mechanism of the education.
Well, Mr. Sanyu, how has been the response of from the schools, students and the parents regarding, your services? Uh, how well they have, received it, and what is the response towards the products and services that they are utilizing through NagaED? I mean, can you
The,
talk about some
the response has
Yeah.
been overwhelmingly positive. I can say that. It doesn't come without its challenges, and it doesn't come without its critics, I should say. But it's been overwhelmingly positive. I'll give an example. Recently, just on Saturday, we returned from a district called Kifri. It's on the border of India and Myanmar. We went to the last villages. In fact, from the village, you can see that if we go over that mountain ridge, we're in Myanmar. So we're going to the last mile villages. And even in these places, people are so prepared to embrace digital education, to embrace technology. Uh, of course, we have our challenges. A lot of what we say, a lot of what we hear is about internet connectivity, device availability. Uh, uh, a lot, as I explained before, was about the technical capabilities and the capacity of the teachers. But aside from all of that, the willingness is there. So people are receiving it with an open heart, and people are receiving it with an open will, because we do have an understanding. Education is a great emancipator. Education is the way that we're going to advance ourselves, the way that we're going to help determine our own future. And education is the path towards that. So there's an understanding of that in the community, even if there isn't an understanding of the technology itself, even if there isn't an understanding of the education landscape, or the methodologies, and that needs to be uplifted. But the willingness is there, which is a great place to start.
Right, right. I understand. In many parts of rural India, or in remote areas and all, the spending ability of people will be comparatively less. So in that case, in the remote corners of the country where you are working on, uh, how affordable your product is to such communities, and are they able to afford it? And can you shed some light on that aspect as well, Mr. Sanyu?
Thank you. This is again another barrier that we talk about, and it's great because we just returned from, like I said, the border of India and Myanmar, visiting the villages, We just returned over the weekend. Um, we've really set ourselves up as a social enterprise, meaning that a large portion of our revenue generated from working with different sets of schools, with government, with private schools, goes into supporting projects where we have communities of lower income. For example, this project in particular, our company is supporting, I think, over 60% of the project costs, and 40% is being contributed for through the district administration. So we realize that affordability is a key issue. So what we've done is in our pricing model, we've really made it reflective of what the community can afford. So you'll find that our products and services are up to 10, 20, even 30 times cheaper than the same technology and the same offerings in a tier one or tier two city. So our pricing model is reflective of the communities that we work with. That's a key area that we focused on. Another thing is that even though we have very affordable pricing, there are some communities, like you mentioned, who are in very rural, remote areas, while last mile villages that will not be able to afford it at all. In these cases, we're working with the government, who pays a nominal fee for the project, for the training, for the implementation, and then we either look for the funds or subsidize it ourselves for the remaining. So just to summarize, we make it. I was just saying that we make it very affordable for schools to jump on board, 10, 20, 30 times cheaper than what's available in tier one and tier two cities, because we're not a purely profit-driven organization. We're a social enterprise. And then in the last mile communities, in villages where the majority of people there are farmers, are living on subsistence farming, we work with the government and help by subsidizing the costs.
Coming to the user-friendly aspect of your products, in many schools, especially public schools, government-run schools in rural areas, they lack technically skilled teachers. In several cases, for that matter. In such cases, do you provide the teachers the training, necessary training for them to, to facilitate them to get used to these, services and your softwares and all? How do you handle such
Yeah,
situation?
you're absolutely right. In these rural and remote areas, training, capability uplift, capacity building is what's required the most. Quite often, even more than the technology deployment itself. For example, in these communities that we're working, these last mile villages, we're doing a 3-year training package. So meaning that we're in the communities, face to face, visiting the communities over the next 3 years with the district administration to build up the capabilities. What we've also found in other schools in more town areas or in villages closer to towns, it usually takes about 12 to 18 months before the teachers are more accustomed. And I think that's where we really differentiate ourselves, is that we're willing to go to these schools, we're willing to go to these last mile villages and be there sitting with them, hand in hand, walking along this journey. Whereas many competitors or many other institutions don't have, it's not a core part of their service. So training is most important. And we're there with the teachers the whole way. In these last mile communities, we're there for up to 3 years. And in most schools, the hand-holding lasts for about 12 to 18 months.
Collaborations and partnerships becomes very important in education sector. Do you have any collaborations or partnerships with some of the institutions, I mean, nationally or internationally, to work with you in this endeavor?
Absolutely, we can't do this on our own. And from day one, we've looked for partnerships. We've worked with NRW with Central Square Foundation. We worked with Alcicera Impact, who incubated us. We also work with individual educators from UK, US, Australia, where I was there for a lot of time. So we bring in the resources, we bring in the thinking, we bring in the design from many parts of the world to help solve these very complex problems and complex issues. So definitely we look for partnerships, not just here, for example, in the state, working with the state government, working with the Department of School Education, District Administration, but also national, working with think tanks like Central Square Foundation, and then internationally, working with researchers from various university institutions to help improve education outcomes for tribal and indigenous communities in rural and remote areas. Please get in touch. We're willing to work with whoever's out there to help some of these greatest challenges in our region.
Right, right. Uh, are you catering to the public schools as well, government run schools, or just privately run schools in Nagaland?
So we're doing both. So with the work in the districts, that's definitely through government. We can't do it without government. It has to be PPP model, private-public partnership, just for the scale of it and the organization of it. It also requires private players to come in for, I would say, for some of the innovation and to bring into the program. But we do work with government schools, we do work with private schools, we work with colleges, we also work with government departments. So interestingly, I'll give an example. We're working with the Disaster Management Authority, and there's a requirement that all teachers and all schools have a school safety plan. This is for the benefit of the student, the teachers, and the community. Right? It talks about bullying, it talks about disaster management, it talks about a whole range of things. And for many years, they've been finding it very, very difficult to reach out to the thousands of schools and educate them on disaster management and school safety. So what we've done is we've digitized the policy, we've turned it into a compliance module, and we're giving access to 10,000 teachers across the state to be able to upskill themselves and to learn more about school safety. So this is definitely in partnership with the government, and that's the power of government, to be able to reach scale, to be able to use the machine that is government to be able to reach as many people as possible. But I think it also takes private partners to bring that innovation and to bring that efficiency.
Right, right. True. Being an entrepreneur, what do you feel about the startup ecosystem in India in general and Northeast India in specific? What's your opinion on the startup ecosystem? How friendly is it, or what challenges you face?
We've had a lot of support. We registered with Startup India, and we were given that startup seed initially, which I think is available to all registered startups through one of the selected incubators. Recently this year, we went to IIM Lucknow in their Noida campus, and they organized an investor meet, and we pitched to 40 plus investors who are all very interested. Many of them followed up, Mumbai Angels, Chennai Angels, and others as well. So there was a lot of support for the work that we're doing. We found. I think in our area, to speak more specifically about the Northeast, it's a very nascent. So the understanding is less. I think I was even speaking to somebody in our region, in our corner. We're still trying to differentiate between a small business, a big business, and a startup. So we're still trying to define what is an entrepreneur. So the language is new, the language is nascent, and I think that's at all players. So that's at the level of the entrepreneur itself. That's the level of the startup he or she may run, and that's also from the government side. and other players integrating the system. So we're all in a very new space, um, and we're all discovering it together. So I think the willingness is there, but I think if I was to be critical, we really need to define the space that we occupy, define what we are, and we really need to upskill ourselves so that we are able to hold that conversation about being an entrepreneur, about being a startup on a national and international level.
Right, right. Do you face competition from other companies, in your sector, in your field? And if you face, then what plans do you have to, you know, um, outcompete them, or to outsmart them, and like that in your
Hun-
area, educational sector?
100%. I think any business in India will face tremendous competition. I think people are very business minded. They like to start new businesses. They like to compete in the market. So there is fierce competition. When I was looking at a stat from I think 2020, and it said that there were 4,500 edtech startups in India. I looked at the same statistic 1 year later, and it had gone up to 6,500. So an additional 2,000 startups in edtech had come in 12 months. So that it's fierce competition. We all know, and we also know that edtech has been a huge player, a huge industry in India. It continues to grow and expected to reach about 30 billion over the next 8 years. So there's fierce competition here. I think in the particular region that we're working, we have a few things to our advantage as NagaED. One thing is that we are focusing on services. So many ed tech companies or digital education companies from tier one and tier two cities have built themselves as a product-based company and they deploy products, right? And that's where, of course, the scale and the profitability is. Um, However, the needs of our region in particular is services. Earlier, we talked about the capability of teachers, the training of teachers, the capacity of teachers. Services is what people need. Services people want. And so that's where we differentiate ourselves greatly. Although we're a digital education company, we focus heavily on our services, our after sales support, our ongoing support, technical support, our training, our onboarding. Our digital advisory, and this really differentiates us in the market. Um, I think that's really something that's pivotal, and I think that's something that's going to continue. Mm. As we were talking about earlier, our region is very nascent. It's only coming into the world, into the fourth industrial revolution. Large parts of the Northeast haven't are still living in an agricultural sense, and so a service based economy or service based company is really a great point of differentiation.
Right, right. Agree. I know, as we know that NagaEd is the first company to attract FDI into Nagaland. Uh, do you, as a founder of NagaEd, do you have some ideas, suggestions, uh, for say policymakers, in order to what can they do to attract FDIs into India? I mean, specifically to Northeast India, because Northeast India share in attracting FDI is very, very, very less compared to the other regions of the India or the regions of the country. So, could you please share some of your suggestions in that regard?
Of the billions of dollars of FDI that flow into India, I think the northeast portion is about 1% or less than one
Yeah.
percent, with the majority of that flowing to Guwahati. Uh, so it
Okay.
is disproportionate. I think on a policy level, it's really about finding or policy that helps find and identifies those entrepreneurs and help support them. So one hand, it's about creating the ecosystem and things that only government can do. So for example, startups, it's very challenging for startups to flourish, especially in the fourth industrial revolution, with intermittent electricity, with intermittent internet, uh, with very poor infrastructure for roads and accessibility. And these are some of the things that only government can resolve. So it's about that overall infrastructure that enables us to do business, right, at a policy level. Um, uh, uh, I think that's key. I would say roads is something that people always bring up. So that overall infrastructure is something that we need, whether it's a digital infrastructure, whether it's a physical infrastructure, and also the business, the ease of doing business. I remember when I started my first business in tourism, it took some almost uh, close to 6 months to register our company account, simply because the banks in our backyard had never dealt with a startup before. So you have an existing registered business with a transaction history. So it's easy to open a bank account. But a newly formed entity with no transaction history was very challenging to start up, to open a bank account. The other thing is to find and identify entrepreneurs, what makes an entrepreneur, people with entrepreneurial mindset and drive, and support those individuals. Right. Before just the other day, I was talking to a friend of mine about the power of one. You know, in one of the villages that we visited last week on the border of India and Myanmar, uh, one of the members of that village had gone to Guwahati to get their education. They got their masters. After getting their master, they came back as a teacher in their village.
Mm-hmm.
The village is very rural and remote area. But because this one person had come back, they convinced the community that education needs to improve and education is their way out. He also works at the school and is one of the lead teachers there, or teachers in charge, headmaster there. And he completely transformed the school. The government school enrollments went from 25 to 125 in 2 years, 4 times more. And that's not just him supporting his village, but the surrounding villages are sending their students there. They offer a free hostel, which is
Mm-hmm.
contributed by the teacher's salary themselves. They make a contribution to the church, the village community, and individual farmers who have little to no funds. They give vegetables for the children in the hostel to eat. Now, there's all the drive of one person. So this one person is transforming the school, uh, uh, his school, village school, is transforming his community village and the surrounding villages. And when those children get that quality education, right, over the next 10 years, those children will then go out and then further improve that community. But this started with one person. So this is the power of one. So what government can do is I help identify who these ones are. You know, who's the one in that village? Who's the one in that village? Who's the one in that town? Who's the one in that sector? And by identifying these people and supporting them as individuals, as entrepreneurs, and help building that ecosystem, we can really, just like this one person transform their whole village and the surrounding villages, we can transform the whole region.
Correct. Yes, true. I agree. You know, what do you, I mean, what message would you like to give to, aspiring or young entrepreneurs in the education sector, to be successful in this field?
This one is
I mean, broadly.
it's not just for entrepreneurs in the education sector. I think it's for entrepreneurs everywhere.
Yeah.
I think one, and I would say most entrepreneurs would agree with me, is start. Don't know, excuse me.
Mhm.
Don't worry about the thoughts in your head. Don't worry about the doubts in your head. Don't worry about people telling you that you can't do it. Of course, when we started, there were a lot of supporters, like friends and family, and other people as well, and people with their no, and there are also detractors. There are a few people out there that say you'll never succeed. Don't worry about it. Don't even bother starting. So there's a lot of inertia in getting started, right? So the key thing for any entrepreneur is don't be on the sidelines, right? Don't be on the sideline watching the game, right? Get out onto the field and play the game, right? So if you've got a business idea, if you've got an idea about something else, don't think about it in your head. Don't watch other people do it. Get out on the field and do it. And right now, today is the time to start. I think the second piece of advice is use everything as a learning experience. So undoubtedly, as entrepreneurs, a lot of us use a trial and error method. A lot of us try many things. We fail many times. We succeed in other times. But the main thing is throughout all this, it's a learning experience. To step outside of yourself a little and say, okay, this is what happened. This is what occurred. What can I learn from this? And therefore, when I try again, what improvements can I make? And that's a continual learning journey and a continuous improvement journey. And that kind of mindset is a great way to get started.
Right. So now, finally, I mean, do you have plans to expand your operations? I mean, the service to other parts of Northeast India and into the mainland India and all. I mean, you want to expand your business?
100%. 100%. We want to grow. We want to reach as many people as possible. And I think our mission is set out for tribal indigenous communities. Many of we find that tribal indigenous communities in many cases are highly disadvantaged, are highly looked over, and very untapped. It's quite untapped. And that does not limit ourselves to just the Northeast. I've had friends in Mongolia that I've spoken to that when I describe the challenges of our villages here, they describe the same thing. When I talk about the solutions, they say, oh, that might work here. I've spoken to friends from the Philippines who do the same thing. I've traveled around Southeast Asia, looked at remote areas in Vietnam that have a lot of the same challenges that we have here. And so there's a lot of opportunity for scope of growth. If we can find models that are sustainable and scalable here in these settings, then we can apply them to many settings around the world. And I think that's our aim over the next few years, to find sustainable, scalable models that we can then deploy in other communities around the world.
Right. Mr. Sanyu, before ending, I would like to ask you, to talk about 1 or 2 minutes more on, that one thought, because whatever NagaED has achieved and, is transforming the schools education in Nagaland, it's all because of that one thought that triggered in your mind that, what is my contribution to my community? So can you talk a bit about more? Because, that one thought has brought in a lot of transformation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the things that are in our mind. So, as I was saying when we started this conversation, there are many things that happen on a day-to-day basis, and many of them times we get distracted, we get occupied by these things. But when you look at the long run, right? Say in terms of looking at over a lifetime, looking at over generations, how important are these things? I get frustrated when I'm stuck in traffic, but if a thought enters my mind over the hopefully, God willing, 90 years of my life, 100 years of my life, or my ancestors down to me, to my descendants, how important is this frustration, right? Or how important is these things? So having a thought about the long run, and then phrasing the question, your beautiful question, whatever it might be for you, within that long run, I think that gives a lot of perspective. It gives a lot of drive. It gives a lot of motivation. The other thing is when finding that question, right? What I found helpful was to give that question space. One was to give that question space in my mind. So this question, what is my contribution to my community? It's not the first time I've had that thought. I had that thought from the time I was 8 years old, 7 years old, 16 years old, 20 years old. That thought is there, right? It's not the first time.
Mm,
But I constantly push away that thought. So the
mm,
first step was to give that thought enough space to breathe, to grow, to nurture that thought, right, in my own
mm,
mind. The
mm,
other thing was also create the space around me so that that action can occur. That thought
mm,
can follow into action, can follow into my behavior, and then ending up with what I'm doing here. So creating that space uh, is actually about clearing out. So
mm,
in our day-to-day life, it's very occupied, right? It's occupied with these activities. I love watching horror movies. It's occupied with watching too many horror movies. It's occupied with my social media. It's all occupied with lots of different things, right? So we need to create space for that. And prior to going out on that journey, my space was actually very much occupied socially,
mm,
right? And uh, in entering that space or allowing that space to occur, I make like a declaration and I say, this is the thing that I want to do, right?
mm, mm.
I want to make a contribution to my community. This is what I want to work towards. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how that looks like, but that is the question I'm going to pursue, right? When you say that and when you declare that, all the things around you, right,
Ah,
can figure out, right? Sometimes you even may meet people, right? Some people in your life who are not about that, or your work is not about that, or your career is not about that, right? That can
mm,
clear out.
mm,
And once it clears out, then you find you have so much space for to do this, right? In my mind, I was thinking, oh, I'm working, sometimes I used to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. On top of that, I'm socializing with my friends a lot. We used to go out on weekends a lot. I used to go hiking, camping, or climbing. These things I still enjoy and I do. But there was a lot of preoccupation,
yeah.
right? And once I started saying that, I actually I went to my boss and I said, I need to quit my job. So everything is okay. She was so shocked. I said, yeah, everything is fine, but I need to contribute to my community. So I cleared out my job,
Mm,
right? So once you clear out these things, you find that you have so much space for this thought, for this action to grow, to breathe. And another amazing thing is once you clear out the space, right? The space that is then able to fill with things and
mm,
people that align with that view. So if I meet somebody along the road and they really want to do transform education in their uh, communities or in tribal industries, very aligned with me, but I'm preoccupied with all these other things. I can't make time for them. I can't make space for them, right? But if my space is empty, then I say,
yeah.
welcome, come in, sit down, let's have a
Yeah.
chat, right? And then this is how things grow. This is how you get momentum. So I think a very important is to have that space in your mind, first of all, to grow,
Mm,
and then have that space around you so that
mm,
things can enter and to
yeah.
create that
Yeah.
space. So, those were great, I think, starting steps and lessons for me in pursuing that initiative.
Interesting. It's very inspiring thoughts as well. All right, thank you so much for spending time with us, for sharing your experience and wisdom. I wish you, on behalf of Fixing Conference, I wish you all the best in all your endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to have this conversation. and I look forward to future content.
Right, right. At the same time, I would also like to thank all the viewers for watching this video. And for more such videos, please do visit our YouTube channel, Ascon Asian Conference. Thank you.